Yeah, so what I'm hoping to do in future is whenever we do an event like this, the the weekend, after the weekend of the event, that I'll be able to process, it will take 3 days, it's on a 3-day event to process all the audio, but after that, all the audio will be available unprocessed and processed, like raw and, so raw for the video editors and processed for anybody who wants to put what they find or other things like that.
I'd love to learn more about
Sorry?
I'd love to learn more about audio.
Yeah, there's a lot in that.
Yeah, because I don't know.
Yeah. Most people who are pretty safe when it comes to audio. The audio is the most important thing actually. Yeah, if you get it nice and crisp, it's very nice. But in our last assistance group, our terrible audio thing, it took me days, literally per day of audio, took me 16 days of editing for every day of audio, just to get the audio right.
There was 4 tracks and you did them individually because the mix was so bad. Yeah.
And yeah, it took me, so I'm still working on it as well.
Because you manually were taking out pops, clicks, coughs.
Yeah, everything.
Mary's water bottle, everyone else's water bottle.
It was terrible, the audio. And then we had a lot of RF noise as well, which was really bad. And now with this system, we haven't got the RF noise, which is great. Yeah.
Is that on your last assistance group?
Yeah.
You're talking about the one on 2019?
Yeah, the ones we haven't got up yet.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's a lot of bad audio where it takes me in one whole day of editing, normally I can edit 4 minutes.
Wow.
We've got the first session of the first group, of both groups I've done the audio of the first session. So I've only done 1/3. Yeah.
And the video editing for the first session of the first group, I've finished that. But we
The video is actually a lot easier than the audio.
Yeah, the video is
It's
quite
So,
enjoyable.
yeah. And if we handed it to somebody professionally to do, it probably cost us $200,000 to do, so we can't do that either. So yeah, that's why it hasn't got out. It's and this is why we wanted to improve our recording setup in live events. Yeah, well, this recording setup actually cost me, the total setup, including all that travel kit and everything, is about 50,000 Australian dollars, which Mary and I paid for out of our own funds. And the reason why we got it was because we can also use it in Australia as well as everywhere else. But the previous setup we couldn't use in the UK or the US because of frequency changes that you've had here with video transmission. And so all of our prior gear, we couldn't use it all legally anywhere in Europe or America or here. So we had to find a system with the right frequency range that allows us to use it in every one of those countries, which meant we couldn't buy it from Australia. So we had to buy it from the USA and from Europe and get all the gear across to Australia, test it all, and then, so it's quite a big operation.
But you mean you're help with editing?
Yeah, was it?
Just see me in the break.
Yeah. Audio editing is there's an art to it, obviously. You don't want to change anything too much. And a lot of the software takes too much out of it, like too much. Yeah, so you end up with bad problems even afterwards. But yeah, there's been, the last group was a bit of a nightmare in that regard. And you can understand why, because it was all about sin, and nobody really wants to hear about it anyway.
But it's such a good group.
It's such a good group. Yeah, so I really would like to get it out. But the trouble is now that we've got a better audio system and everything, it's almost like do the whole group again would might be a better option than just editing the last group. Because if we do the whole group again, it's only going to take us a month and we'd have good sound straight away. And we'd probably be able to edit the whole thing and get it all out within a few weeks, right? And so we have considered actually running that entire group again, just for the sake of getting the material out. Yeah. Next year or something. Yeah. So
I think it'd be fun to do. It's great material.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. Actually, we were in a really good space together where I was really enjoying the presenting of it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, it's sad that we had the problems because now that we've got the good audio set up, I've also got a very good video set up at home now too, where we've got 8 camera feeds, which we can do from all different angles. And what we found is it's best to have no camera operators and 8 camera feeds, because you can get them in group of 4 camera streams, and then when you're switching, you can just switch between the camera streams. If there's stuff where there's no good shot on, face on shot, you can get it from a different shot, from a different angle. So yeah, it's actually a very good setup with regard to the cameras as well. Very old cameras. We've got cameras that are like 8, 9, 10 years old, something 10 years old, but they're still good enough for 1080p. So, and we've got these good recorders now that can record that data if we ever wanted to do video. But on this trip, it's very hard. We've already got 2 extra bags. If we brought video with us as well, it'd be way too much for us to carry. We have big problems even getting to and from airports, because even most of our bags we've currently got are too big to fit in most people's cars. So you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, we'll come and pick you up," and we go, "Okay, what size car you got?" That's a big issue. Like, people don't realise how big an issue is the issues. Yeah. And then they try to come with their friends to pick us up. It's like, all the friends are going to have to go over in different vehicles. Things like that. It's just, a van would be the idea.
Touring van we need in Europe.
Yeah, we're thinking in Europe, if we had like a touring van or something, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? Because you've got right and left side of the road in Europe versus here. If you're all on the same side of the road as Europe, it would be a lot easier, but you know, it's hard to drive a right-hand drive van on a left-hand drive.
It's so confusing anyway.
Yeah.
For us, in Europe, we have to.
Yeah, you get sort of used to driving on one side of the road and then the other, don't you? And then after a while you get used to doing either interchangeably, but then to have a van that's on the wrong, you know, where the steering column's on the wrong side. The whole world is crazy, man. Who decided to have, like, the first cars were made basically in the US, weren't they? The very first cars, or the very first mass-produced cars, were made in the US. With Ford in Henry, the old.
What was it? Tucker. That was the first car.
Yeah, the first cars were made in England, but the first cars mass-produced were made in the USA. So you'd think that everyone who would then mass-produce a vehicle would just go all the same way, you know. Lovely thing would be, wouldn't it? Then we can make all the side roads the same, and all the road signs the same, and all the. But no. Culturally, I want to be different. There's all sorts of very dark motivations driving differences as to why we don't all speak the same language and why we don't all have the same standards. And it creates huge amounts of problems. There's even been huge amount of people died in aircraft crashes because of it, because of just not translating kilograms to knots to, you know, like kilograms to pounds properly with regard to fuel loads, and then not, you know, properly calculating knots to miles per hour to kilometres per hour, you know, all these different measures, and then, you know, and then when pilots get a new plane, they've got to go to this plane doing all the calculations in, and then the air traffic control, like in Russia, the air traffic control is all metric, and then here it's all in like imperial, and it's like, it's a huge mess. And then you look at nuts and bolts even. It's like, instead of having one type of nut and bolt with all these different, you know, measurements and different thread counts, no, they've got to make an imperial SAE, you know, metric, and just goes on and on and on. And you know, most people don't understand what drives it either. A lot of it is just arrogance and pig-headedness on the part of individuals. Also wanting to have like copyright over things and control of things is a big issue. And you end up with the whole world running on different standards in different areas with different engineering like problems associated with that. And then, of course, when somebody tries to engineer something or they design something, if they make an error, and people die. And it's all just because somebody decided to make a different standard. Yeah. Lots of practical areas, physical areas where the world is being very unloving and continuing to be. Yeah, unfortunately. All right, we better sort out the mics.
Yeah. Who would like to be microphone? Anna and Karen today.
Okay.
Right. And you remember the instructions from yesterday, ladies?
So chin and chest.
Chin and chest. Don't go to the person till we indicate. Stay with the person till it's finished.
Yeah, careful of you bumping it on your lap and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Lovely.
So,
Okay.
all right. Otherwise, we have to edit everything individually rather than in one mix. That's the reason for why. Okay. How's everyone today?
Good.
Looking forward to today?
Yeah.
With trepidation.
Yes. One night. Yeah.
What other things are you going to take away from me today?
What do you mean? What other things?
Well, you know, I took away their toilet paper yesterday.
Oh.
Took away their coffee last week. And took away the week before.
What else is getting
What else is
by
getting-
4 p.m.?
Yeah. So,
Hopefully we can focus on some of the spiritual principles
Yeah.
that will help us
Yeah.
with all those physical decisions.
yeah, that's our focus today. So last night, remember I said we will probably try to get started straight away with questions and that we've given some thought to the principles involved. There is one thing that I would like to raise with you guys today, but we'll see where the questions take us in the first hour. And if the questions don't take us in the direction of where I would like to have some discussion, then what I'll do is I'll just pause the questions and we'll raise some issues that we feel for many of the people in the group, particularly many of you young men in the group, that we'd like to address. That we find worldwide is happening with many young men. When I say young men under 40 or thereabouts. There's a lot of things going on spiritually around many of you, and we'd like to sort of discuss some of that as a part of our discussion today, because we feel that many of you are actually, without knowing it, are severely misrepresenting our teachings through what you choose to do with your life, and so it's something we need to address. Is that right? Okay. All right, well, let's get started. Who wants to start first? Let's go to this. Yep, keep your hand up. That's it. Name, please. Daniel.
So the first young man.
Face down there.
So I have two questions. I don't know which one to start with.
Yeah.
I'll go with that one.
Let's start with the one you feel the most about.
Right. So I feel like I have feelings that I would really like to meet my soulmate, and I feel her sometimes.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like that part is open.
Yeah.
So like I don't want to get into the story, right?
Do you think you already know who it is?
I have an idea.
Yeah. Or you have an
Idea, but I'm open to being wrong. You know?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of battling with the sexuality. So I guess principle-wise, I'd like to know how I'm harming myself, my soulmate, and the person who I'm, for example, projecting onto.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about this issue of, we have talked in a previous group, I think it was in
Belgium. Is what you're thinking of? Portugal and Belgium we
we
talked
talked
about.
about soulmates a bit in both of those
On the
discussions.
last day, that video might not have been, it might have been taken down, so there's only an audio. On the last day.
It's taken down
last-
because-
Can I add something? Because I feel like, from my experience, if you feel like, for example with porn, I don't want to watch that anymore because I feel like there's so much, it's just so much darkness in that. But there are degrees to that as well, right?
Well,
Like, I don't.
we need to have a conversation about sexuality in general with this audience, because
Yeah,
it's one of
yeah.
your main problems.
but if from experience, if you feel, if you get a sense of like what's actually going on, then you kind of drop the desire to do that, and I may be wrong, but and then yeah.
So
Can you see firstly, let's address one thing.
Okay.
You're asking questions, but you're not even allowing me to say anything.
Okay, sorry.
And we notice this a lot too, because many of you have a very set idea of what the problems are. And so when you ask questions, it's a lot of times about making statements rather than asking questions about what you already believe. And to be frank with you, what you believe is already quite corrupted. So the more you share it, the more my group gets tainted by your sharing. So I would like to focus on the truth about the problems that most men in particular face, and men of all ages face when it comes to sexuality. And then I'd also like to focus on the problems associated with what many men, particularly young men who are in competitions with their fathers, face with regard to their ability to hear truth and also spirit involvement in their activities, their day-to-day life. Those two areas are having a fairly large effect on the planet, on Earth, at the moment, and a lot of people in the guise of spirituality are actually doing a lot of damage. And this is what we also notice with our teachings, is that people grab our teachings and then use our teachings to justify a lot of very unloving behaviour, which is not what we're teaching. So we want to address those things if we can. Right? So I understand what your position, I can feel your position, I can understand what your position is with sexuality, but let's discuss that first. But it's very connected to the issue of finding your soulmate as well, because unless you deal with issues of intergender emotional issues, and you actually bring the sins that are inside of yourself and you release those sins aside that are associated with intergender emotional issues, what will eventually happen is you'll be so close to your soulmate, there's no way you will ever find her on Earth, and there's no way you will ever, even if you do find it, ever recognise her really as your soulmate anyway. So there are a number of things we need to discuss about the dynamics of how some of these things get set up, but also about what principles are involved with regard to sexual morality, right? Because if you look at our hierarchy, remember like yesterday we raised the hierarchy. What was that? So you can say these things. What was the highest on our hierarchy?
Truth, love.
Yeah. So what are they? Spiritual.
Oh, spiritual, emotional.
Yeah. So they're spiritual matters, or you could say they are spiritual principles, aren't they? Which are the most important thing that should guide our life, right? And then comes what is my emotional condition. And obviously, in emotions, we could basically broadly define emotions into two areas. You could say there's loving emotions, and then there's unloving emotions, right? So an example of that is fear is always an unloving emotion. So you want to be able to release it and get rid of it, because it's going to drive a lot of behaviour that's very unloving if you don't. So fear is very much associated with sin. Anger is usually, and I say usually, a very unloving emotion. When I say usually, what I mean is most people do, in Western society, do need to feel anger at some point because they have a lot of high demands and expectations, and they're going to have to work their way through the principles as to why they have those demands and expectations. And to do that, they're going to have to feel their anger. But at the end of the day, anger is all about controlling deeper, harder emotions to feel. So that's another example of an emotion that really is not good for you. And if you live in those places, you're going to get very dark very quickly generally. So there's emotion. And emotion, you've got good emotions as well, like loving emotions, isn't there? Happiness, joy, these are good emotions. And sorrow in itself is actually a good emotion in the sense that it's an emotion that you won't project upon others unless there's fear involved with your sorrow. So what I mean by that is, if you feel grief by yourself and without demanding anybody around you take your grief away, then that can be actually a loving expression of an emotion. even though the emotion itself will not exist in you once you become at one with God, up until that point, feeling grief is a fact of life while you release emotion. So it's actually a healing emotion, grief. Anger is not a healing emotion. Fear is not a healing emotion. So there are certain emotions that will heal you, and there are certain emotions that are just going to make your life worse. Right? 3, the same applies with the sexual side of things, right? So we talked about sexual. There's a whole lot of spiritual principles involved in sexuality that need to be understood and felt in the heart before you make changes with your sexuality. The world today is becoming very, very permissive when it comes to sexuality. So it's almost like sex with anyone is fine as long as it feels good and both people agree. And God does not agree with that idea. God doesn't agree with that idea because from God's perspective there are a lot of things that go on even if two people are consensual. There's a lot of things that go on that are not being addressed that are actually very unloving in sexual behaviour. And these particular things are actually going to degrade your soul. Even if both of you are consenting, they're still going to degrade your soul. So sexual behaviour, and then of course we talked about the last area of physical life, and that's where I've mentioned things like toilet paper, for example, and engineering that I just talked about as an aside before we started the script this morning. And there's a whole lot of physical areas where our lives are very unloving as well, and we need to look at the spiritual principles so that we change the physical areas of our life that are unloving. So really what we want to do, as you can see from that, is we want to focus on the spiritual principles when we're discussing the issue of both. So the two issues that you've really raised in the one question are, how do I find my soulmate? So we want to talk a bit about soulmates. And then the other thing is, how do I deal with my sexual addictions?
Is that the guts of your question? They're the two kind of main areas you wanted to ask about?
Yeah, because they kind of...
And you can see, if you keep your mic up with it, you can see that they are related, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because if I'm in sexual addiction, I'm definitely going to find it a struggle either to find my soulmate, but even if I do find my soulmate, I'm probably going to destroy the relationship.
Because there's sexual addictions and there's me being involved sexually when I'm not enjoying it, but I do it because I want to.
Well, that's all sexual addiction.
There's still
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Most people's sexual addictions are also involving their emotional addictions, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, their emotional addictions are even more intense than their sexual addictions, and that's what drives actually their sexual behaviour. Right? So an example of that is, let's look at emotional addiction. Emotional addiction of wanting power. So let's say I've got an emotional addiction of wanting power, and when I became a teenager, I realised that people give up power in sex a lot. And people take power over others in sex a lot. So when I become a teenager, I work out that I can meet this emotional desire for power by attempting to do things sexually that make me feel more powerful than the person I'm having sex with. Does that make sense to you? So the emotional addiction of wanting power causes you to also generate a sexual addiction, which is I'm going to be dominated to get power over someone. So this is where you get things like, what do they call it? Masochism, BDSM, bondage, where you've got one person's got physical power over another that also feels sexually turned on by having that physical power, and the other one is in a submissive role and they feel sexually turned on being in a submissive role. And that's indicative of emotional addictions that are coming out in the sexual behaviour of the person.
But Joe, you'd have to say that's at the extreme. It's still happening many times when none of those practices are engaged.
Correct. In fact, for the majority of people on earth, most of their sexual addictions are involving emotions that drive their sexual behaviour, right? So let's say you're a guy who finishes up, like, just even looking at lots of different women sexually with a feeling that you would like to have sex with them, right? So that in itself, from God's perspective, just you looking is a sin. It's already out in harmony with love. And underneath the looking is the emotion driving the looking, which is what? What emotion drives you to look at the bottoms of every woman you see, or look at the breasts of every woman you see, or just see a woman as a sexual object, and that's all. What emotions causes you to do that? Can you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. The majority of people don't know, but
I've been trying to like.
you're going to need to know.
Yeah, intellectually, I can't, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't, at least.
Yeah, I think
Until then.
if we said the same to most men would say, oh, I don't really know. And in fact, a lot of men even go stronger than that. They actually say, well, this is what a man does. They almost justify, they're almost going, God created me to be this way, and that's the way I'm going to be. Almost, for most men, that's how they feel. After you get a bit more sensitive emotionally, or a bit more sensitive to the spiritual principles, you start seeing, obviously this behaviour doesn't feel right, and particularly if I have a soulmate, she's not going to be that impressed with me looking at every woman while I'm with her, right? So it's going to be an issue. And also, the body of my soulmate may not match your ideal woman body. So what do you do then? And what I see a lot of people doing is saying, such and such my soulmate, such and such my soulmate. And what I see is such and such matches the body type that your mother, that you grew up believing was the best body type for a woman that you're sexually attracted to. And so if that best body type was a big-breasted woman, then you're looking for a woman with big boobs. Or
then there's, but it could be both, like, right? Because like it could be, I mean.
You mean your soulmate could have big boobs?
No.
Sorry, I wasn't going to make fun. I'm just
Sure,
trying to help.
yeah.
what do you mean by could be both?
Yeah, what could be both?
Me being attracted to both my mom's physical appearance and then.
Or repelled by it.
Or repelled.
Yeah, you could also be repelled by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Which
you're
you
saying
might-
you could be attracted to more than one body type. Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being attracted to more than one body type is interesting in itself, because it's sort of like, well, obviously you're already not understanding what body type contains a certain type of injury, and like there's a common feeling on earth, isn't there? And this is going to be very confronting for all of you, and that a man has a certain ideal body type, and a woman's a certain ideal body type. Right? Now, the actual truth is that God designed all of you to have a certain body type. There's no such thing as a different body type. God designed all of you to have the same body type. And what he did was, if we look at it from a mathematical perspective, he devised it around the golden ratio, which is fundamentally that with a lot of digits after it. And your entire body has been designed to be in this ratio. And if you are healthy, your body will be in this ratio. Now, this is if you're perfect, and if your family was perfect, and if their mother and father were perfect, and if the mother and father of your mother and father were perfect, and great-grandparents were perfect, then all of us would have perfect body type. A whole lot of us. We wouldn't be interfered with a body type at all. And then what would it be? All of us would look great, and so after a while you'd feel really much like there's no body type that doesn't look great, and so therefore we're not worried about body type anymore. But at the moment on Earth, because there's been distortions, there's a lot of emotions in the lineage of the parents and right down great-grandparents and so forth, body types change based on the injuries that you face. So what happens is this ratio starts getting distorted through the genetic and emotional injuries that get passed down from one generation to the next. And so what we have now on Earth is far removed, actually, and also historically was far removed for many years, was even so bad that people looked like animals for a while, right? That's how degraded their body types became because of all of these different injuries. But that was the perfect thing. So the problem, part of the problem with our of this issue is in our souls, this is programmed. This is instinctual. We're going to look at that and go, that's perfect. We're going to look at that ratio and everything we look at and think that that is perfect. So the Greeks knew this, the Egyptians knew this in the past, the Romans knew this in the past, and nowadays most people are not educated about it because there's this whole rage about, you've got to accept my body type. That sort of meant that we've gone away from acknowledging that we are programmed to see beauty and recognise it.
And then there's age as well, right? Which is kind of
there's age. So there's what we call that is physical. What we see as physical appearance, right? So that's one. Is it ants or ants? Ants. And we've got age. So physical age we're talking about here.
Well, gender.
We've also got gender, because a lot of you don't realise it, but you have blockages towards one gender or the other or both because of your history. And so some people who say they're attracted to, the same gender are actually not attracted to the same gender at the soul level because but they feel they are because they've got a big blockage with their dad and they haven't dealt with that. Or a big blockage with their mum and they haven't dealt with that. So there's gender issues in terms of sexual, we're talking about attraction now, not addiction. But what happens is all of these things then start to flick into your assessment. And you can say all of this assessment is physical sensory. In other words, your senses, see, hear, there's a physical senses involved in assessment. And most of this is actually seeing, isn't it? What you see. And it's not really the person, you're not seeing the soul of the person, you're just seeing the physical appearance. And it's interesting when we say to people, people say, I think I know who my soulmate is, and they go, okay, what's she like, or what's he like? And they list all the things they like about the person, and it happens to be the same thing as everybody else likes. And I'm going, well, that doesn't tell me anything, right? Because the physical appearance of the person is not their soul. Not their soul at all. So we have physical appearance stuff that's programmed, and then we also have physical appearance stuff that's based on addiction. So in other words, my mum was a very nurturing woman towards me. Let's say I'm a boy and my mum was very nurturing. So I'm now looking for a woman probably with larger breasts and, because that's indicative of the nurturing emotion in a woman. The woman's emotions, usually their breasts will get over large if they nurture overly. And also what will happen is so this is a distortion of the physical appearance that's going on that happens over time. So when they were young, they didn't have it, but as they're growing, and you see it during puberty a lot, the changes that occur, they're changing into the emotional injuries that their soul has ingested by that time. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. But my mum was it's kind of the opposite because I
know. I'm just. Yeah. You keep wanting to tell me what your mum is. I'm just giving the principle. You want to keep telling me what your personal situation is. I'm trying to give you some principles. So physical appearance is going to be dependent upon. Now, your mum wasn't nurturing, right? And smaller breasts, and this is what you like. You don't like women with oversized breasts.
But then I am attracted to that.
Sorry?
No, I am attracted to that.
Well, yes, because you had no nurturing in your childhood as well.
Right.
So physically, you've got a couple of different emotions going on. You've got, firstly, this is why it's confusing for you, because emotionally you've got the one emotion that's saying, my mum has smaller breasts and I've idealised my, or not. If you've idealised your mother, then you'll be attracted to a woman with smaller breasts. But if you haven't idealised your mother and you feel like you're not nurtured, then you want a woman with bigger breasts. And sometimes you want both because one indicates one thing, one indicates another thing, and you have both of those injuries. So, this is where a lot of attraction gets very distorted. And in the end, none of that matters when it comes to soulmates. Right? What matters are what the personality and the nature of your soul is, and you will see the personality and nature of the other person as being the same, right? And that's not what most people who tell us they've found their soulmate and they think they know who they are feel. In fact, many people who say those things go, I saw them on a video, and we've had this happen. I saw that lady in whatever country on the video, and she said similar things to me, and she felt the same way as I do. There's my soulmate. There's no knowledge of the person's personality or nature, and also hardly any knowledge of your own. The average person on earth hardly lives in their personality or nature at all. Right? They live in a facade for the most part. And this is one thing John wanted to mention to our friend John, the Apostle John, wanted to mention to you as a group, is that many of you don't realise how untruthful you're being by living in a facade, even to yourself, right? And so this is a big problem that we see all around the earth as well. So here we have a number of different issues which are defining, and then of course you've got what you would classify as emotional addictions regarding appearance, regarding personality, and regarding character. And mostly the addictions are regarding character rather than personality. So we should probably put the personality right on the end. But most of the addictions are regarding character. In other words, many of you are attracted to people of very poor character. Very poor character. So let's say your soulmate happens to be in jail at the moment. Right? Her character is such that she's done something that even society believes is wrong, which is often worse than what the average population believes is wrong, and therefore probably worse than what you believe is wrong. So in other words, you believe what she's done is very wrong. But what if she's your soulmate? What are you going to do about that? We've known people who, example, Emperor Nero of Roman times in the 1st century, his soulmate waited for him for 2,000 years. She knew all the time after she died, she knew very quickly after she died that he was her soulmate. He tortured her to death in an arena. Right? She was a Christian when she died, and he obviously was the Roman who put her in, really, in the arenas that they used for sport. Right? And she worked through all of her own feelings about that, realised who her soulmate was, that it was Nero, the man who had murdered her and her entire family. He'd done all that to her, right? And she came to work her way through all of that. She came to love him. And all this time, he was in hell, in the hells of the spirit world, and going through literally hundreds of thousands of sins that he committed on earth. Hundreds of thousands of sins, working his way through them. And she would come to him occasionally to try to help him, and he wouldn't recognise her, and he didn't even know who she was. And it wasn't actually until he was in the 3rd sphere of the spirit world, so quite a good principled area of love, that he realised, he didn't even realise that she was his soulmate, but he realised he wanted her to be. Right? And that's when she told him that she was. After he told her that he wanted her to be his soulmate. And he said to her, no, I'm not worthy of you, or all those things, but I really love it that my soulmate's like you, And he didn't realise that the entire time up to then, that she was helping him the entire time, trying to help him progress through all of his addictions and all of his problems, of which he had many of these, right? You imagine people in power, for the most part, have unlimited, unfettered access to, like, as many sexual partners as they want and as many of their emotional addictions as they want to have. And so, of course, it was very difficult for him to make changes. So, her desire to be with him wasn't based on his character. It was based on the knowledge of who he actually was and his soul, in his soul, that she was his other half. It wasn't. She realised that during her own progress, she realised that she couldn't choose her soulmate. It was already done for her. All she had to do is discover who she was firstly, and then also discover who he is by discovering who she was. Right? And that's a very different thing than going, oh, I like the look of you, so you must be my soulmate, or I feel attracted to you in some way, so you must be my soulmate. That's not the process that goes on here. So the issue then becomes, well, we've got sexual addictions, we've got emotional addictions, we've got appearance addictions, which are really physical addictions. We've got character-based issues. In other words, there's certain character flaws that you like in another person. An example of that, almost all the men in this audience like their women to be subservient. In other words, they want to be the god in their family. They want pretty much all of you want the women to believe what you believe, feel what you feel, and also feel for you more than you feel for them. Right? And that gives you a feeling of power, authority. It's a very strong injury on earth. Most men on earth have this problem. Right? But in the process of having this problem, there's a whole heap of spiritual principles being broken. Firstly, the principle of equality, which is the most very important love-based principle, is being broken. Because basically, most men are sexually attracted to someone they're not equal to. Right? That they feel better than. Right? And so this is a problem, right? Because what it does is it causes... And unfortunately, many women have been brought up in this world we live in for thousands of years. Women have been brought up to serve men. For thousands of years. The patriarchal society that we now are living in dominantly, most women have been brought up to serve men. So you see this happening in families to this day, where the little boy, he's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's allowed to have a messy room. He's just a boy. But the girl, she has to tidy up her room. She's got to help mum cooking and cleaning, and she's got to do all of those other things. But the boy doesn't have to. Instead, we take the boy to soccer because that's a man's thing, you know. Soccer, football, we take it. So we're encouraging even the next generation of children to still have this same attitude that women are there to serve. And unfortunately, many women now in themselves say, I'm not a good woman if I'm not a good mother. No, being a good mother means that I sacrifice for my family. I sacrifice for my husband and I sacrifice for my children. And the net result of that sacrifice is the women in the family are treated as the lowest person in the family, because she's doing everything for everyone else and nothing for herself, and nothing that is good for her development of her personality, like discovering who she is and what she loves in life and everything. That's all neglected for the sake of just being a mother and a wife, a partner and a wife and a mother, right? And this is why many women have a desperation to have a child now as well. It's like, because this is treated in society, unless you're a mother, you haven't experienced being a woman yet. Right? So these distortions, the flip side of that distortion is the men have the injury that this is the woman's role. My role is to go out and earn the bread, you know, earn the dosh, earn the money. Not even sometimes. Sometimes many of the younger men we're noticing have the idea, my role is to sit here like a prince, and you go out and earn the money, and you come home and cook the meal, and you come and clean my clothes, and you do everything for me, and I'll do it The woman does it because the man gives her a sense of approval and she's desperate for that. Right? So there's many women who are in desperation for a man's approval, and they'll do that. Right? So the problem with that is these are all character things that, in other words, areas of spiritual principles that are being blatantly ignored, and the primary one being equality, blatantly ignored in a relationship. Yeah? Now, because that one is blatantly ignored, you can see that's going to cause distortions emotionally, which are, I'm attracted to a person I can control. I'm attracted to a person who agrees with me. I'm attracted to a person who makes me feel good about myself. I'm attracted to a person who makes me feel sexually desirable, and so forth. And if they give me sex, then I feel like, that means that I'm a great guy. Right? When actually, if a woman ever come up to me, other than me, and offered me sex, I'd go, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't she get the message that Mary's my girl? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't she get that message? Right? So that would be one of the first things I would look at. And then if I felt like, no, I'm definitely giving out the message, Mary's my girl, then I go, well, how can I help her to see that what she's doing with me is wrong? No, I'm not going to do anything with her sexually. I'm not. I don't. In fact, whenever she feels that, I feel like no. Like, you just soulmate somebody else, right? But if I have a sense of equality, I can also feel, the reason why she's doing these things is because she feels like she needs to offer herself to somebody, right? Rather than, and obviously the opposite feeling in the man must be that he wants somebody to offer herself to. So equality is a problem. There's also issues. So equality, whenever equality is not equal, there's now going to be bad things occur, such as, so when equality is not being practiced, now we're going to have a power differential in the relationship. Right? We're going to have an affection differential in the relationship. Do you understand what I mean by an affection differential? Like, the woman feels affectionate for the guy, but the guy can't really care less. As long as she feels affectionate, he's happy. But if she shows affection to anybody else, he's jealous. These kind of things. So these are like affection differentials. There's also what I would classify as addiction differentials, which are, so all these are addictions, obviously, but where the person opens their heart more and one person closes their heart more in the relationship. So you've got what I would classify as a love-power dynamic there. So there's inequality. So love, instead of being love, is all about power now, right? You've got affection. You've got also desire. When I desire Mary and she remains aloof, then she has power over my desire. Does that make sense to you? And this is what goes on in many relationships.
It does make sense.
No?
So if Jesus is very open with me and desirous of me, and I
express my desire for Mary in terms of my day-to-day life, I want to spend time with her, I want to do things with her, I want to, help her with her life, give her gifts.
So he's very open-hearted, he's very open in his life, his time, his affection and everything to me, and I'm withheld. I have the power to say when and how we'll engage, and because he's very desirous and I'm very aloof, it's I can sort of play with his affections, I suppose you could say. You look so innocent, Chris, but it's such a common issue.
No, I understand.
Yes.
Well, microphone, if
Yes.
you're going to use this. So just,
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't address it.
yeah, you shouldn't be addressing people.
Yeah, when they don't have mic.
AJ is being fully open to you, fully giving, and that's within his control and his power. You have the right to refuse. I don't see why your refusal would affect him at all in what to give. He may choose to stop giving, but your refusal would
Chris, the level of arrogance in this is extreme.
No, I get that, yeah.
But if you listen to Mary, you'll see how it works.
Yes, yes.
And also, can I say, you guys, whenever Mary starts opening her mouth, this is part of the problem that you do. This is one reason why Mary doesn't want to talk very much in a group like this, is because you're already projecting at the woman that anything she says is not of value. And so when she starts talking, you're already saying to her, it's not of value what you're saying, it's not of value what you're saying, I don't need to listen. Instead of, yes, you do need to listen. She's a woman with a perspective that most of you ignore. So you need to listen. I mean, women generally, their perspective you ignore.
Yes.
So you need to listen. So
It's quite
listen.
interesting being up here as a woman, because pretty much when I address any man, there is no, it's like I'm addressing sort of, it's like
A brick wall.
Teflon, it kind of Teflon. There's no reception when I speak. I watch you guys with Jesus, and he speaks, and there's sometimes a bit of reception, sometimes a bit of engagement, but as soon as I open my mouth, it's just like I'm sort of talking to the wall sort of thing.
Yeah. And most women feel this with you. Do you understand? Most women feel this because you're not just Mary.
Yes.
Any woman who's sexy is going to feel this with you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We're talking about...
And Mary does not need to justify to you, Chris, just because you have a different opinion of what she's saying. What she's saying is true and real, and you need to have a listen to it rather than opening your mouth before you've heard anything.
Well,
So
yeah, and
that's
the projection is very strong.
Very strong,
Like,
yeah.
It's rubbish. It's rubbish,
Yeah,
which
rubbish.
is why I sort of engaged you correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if Jesus is expressing all this towards me,
Yep.
and I'm saying I want a relationship with
So
you.
in other words, I'm open-hearted, I want to come towards Mary, I want to spend time with Mary.
What are you doing tomorrow? Let's
You're
do
right
this.
that it is my choice. right?
Absolutely.
But it is a loving choice. If she's my soulmate, it's a loving choice.
And especially if this dynamic is we are in a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm saying I want a relationship with you, which is what you were referring to.
Correct.
In most marriages and,
Yeah.
you know.
By being in a marriage, you're really saying you want a relationship with the other person.
It's
right?
like, I'm saying, yes, I want to
By
say.
being in a partnership, you're saying that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. But then Jesus is doing all of the expression of affection. He's making time for me. He's interested in what will make me happy. He notices things. He's expressive sexually and physically affectionate. And then I withhold my own personality, my own desire, my own expression of affection. I'm really saying, I don't...
The person who's withholding
Yes.
is in a power struggle with the person.
They're
with the
saying,
other person.
I'm not going to open myself to you, I'm not going to expose my heart to you, but you can do it with me. And therefore I get to be...
They get to feel that they're powerful. Oh,
that
yeah.
they are trying to take power in that engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. So not me. Like I can have the attitude, well, somebody could try to take that power of me, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm still going to be affectionate, and I'm still going to be, if it's Mary, I'm still going to be affectionate. I'm still going to do all those things, whether she wants power over me or not.
Yes.
Right?
But you wouldn't...
But I wouldn't respond to the power. Right?
You wouldn't respond to the power.
Yeah.
And this happened between us, where, and it's very true, it's very good, it's very triggering. When we first got together, I had exactly that dynamic going on, and Jesus still felt very affectionate and desirous of me, but wouldn't engage with me while I was wanting power. And that was great, because it triggered all of my issues with power, and why I didn't want to expose my heart to a man and show myself, yeah.
Yeah, and if a person's humble, they'll work through it emotionally.
Yeah.
But that's what I do.
So definitely it's up to the free will desire of each person. He's not obliged, I'm not obliged to give that to him, but if I am in a relationship and saying I want to be with him and I withhold those things.
Then you're being duplicitous.
Yes.
You see? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go back to... Yeah.
So that's what I felt when I walked in here yesterday, with you married. I felt the Teflon straight away, and so was that like?
You felt Teflon towards me?
I see. I don't know. There was Teflon.
Yes.
I felt Teflon because with AJ, I was like, "Wow, he's amazing. I wish I was like him." All that stuff.
Yeah.
And I look at you, and I was
feel that way though.
I know, but I was kind of afraid of you. I was afraid to look at you as well. I was looking, and you looked at me, and I look away, and and then I felt this like confrontation of something, but I didn't know what it was. But I guess it was this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of you guys, and like a lot of you guys, because I'm not putting out all this sexual energy, like, oh, I want to, I'll give you a bit of sexual energy. And a lot of
Which
women
is the
are
main
trained-
way which most of you guys trade with women.
Yes.
It's through sexual energy.
Yes.
Yeah. In other words, a woman gives me a feeling of sexual approval, I'm a great guy. A woman can't give me a that feeling of sexual approval, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and before I did any work on myself, that's how I engage with men as well. I come from a family, my cousins, my uncles, my dad, my grandfather, they all wanted sexual energy from. That's how they notice a woman. So I used to just give it out I wasn't like overtly flirtatious, I wouldn't have said,
No.
but I just gave special attention. It was like special attention to men.
And the men around Mary, when I met her, were extremely sexually demanding of her.
Yes.
Like, extremely.
Yes.
All
They-
the family, even family, like.
Acidity, yeah. Yeah. So, yes, there's that. There's also a bit like, Jesus is really being our personality and he loves truth. But I love it as much, but it's often when I feel a lot of... Also, you guys don't understand, a lot of the younger men, you bring a lot of spirits who really want power over women. They really
Strong
want.
stuff.
Yeah. So partly it's my humility in just feeling about that and still being myself, because I do have a tendency to still withdraw into myself a bit. Yeah. But yeah, I think that a lot of you guys struggle with me because it's like, well, there's no sexual engagement, so what is there? How do we, who is she? Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to add to that, Dave?
Well, I'm just listening to all of the things inequality, the opposite of equality, what is indicative of the opposite of equality. And, we could list probably 50 or 60 things here, actually, all the opposite of equality. And like, you can have affection dynamic, you can also have a approval dynamic. The man gives the woman approval only when the woman does what he wants her to do. Is an example of that. So that's an approval dynamic. Right, so that means that women needs approval from a man, but you see, many women do need approval from a man in the sense of an addiction because their dads didn't give them approval and much approval. Their dads didn't give them much approval in their life, and also many dads don't even give their daughters much time either in their life because dad's off working all day, every day, often comes home when the kids have gone to bed when they're very young, and so naturally, the problem with that dynamic is that they hardly get to see their dad until their dad's got a better job and can come home earlier and things like that. And so, oftentimes that's not until teenage life. And so, many women become quite addicted to the need for a man's approval. And many men know you give a woman approval, right, and you give her too much approval, she won't do what you want. If you give her just not enough approval, because of her desperation to have approval, often women will do what you want continuously. That's the whole idea, the whole adage, treat them mean and keep them keen. And this is a very common, in fact there's whole internet sites now that are saying, man, if you want to have more sexual liaisons with women, this is how you treat a woman. And really what it's doing is hooking into the woman's desire for approval, and many women, if you give them some level of approval, it just could be some emotional approval, oh, you're a great girl, or being a great mum, or whatever, she'll want to go to bed with you. Most men understand this, and therefore they use it, right? So these are just examples of inequality in terms of the gender relationships, right? And as I said, we could just keep on going on and on and on and on down this list because there's a huge amount of addictions that result because of a lack of the spiritual principle of equality inside of a person. In this audience, it's extreme. And in most of our audiences we meet, it's extreme in the sense that most women are in these, have been treated badly most of their lives by men, and most men know that they want to continue to treat women in this way, therefore treat them badly. Most men don't even see this as bad treatment. They say, I'm just giving the woman what she needs. Right? She needs to feel like she's cared for. The woman's just as capable of caring for herself as as any other person. And by the way, most of you guys are fully incapable of caring for yourself. Actually, in comparison to how a woman cares for herself, in many cases. It's like, oftentimes we see in a marriage even, the man just goes to work and comes home, that's all he basically does. He doesn't look after the finances, he doesn't look after the kids, he doesn't look after anything else in their life. He doesn't do the shopping, he doesn't do the washing, doesn't do the ironing, doesn't do anything, even to care for his own responsibilities, aside from caring for the car, caring for the yard, and going to work. Right. Now, she's got a lot more responsibilities than that, guys. So why is there this power dynamic going on? And she's got to ask you to vacuum the floor. Right? Why don't you notice the floor's dirty? She's got to, ask you to go and get some milk. Well, if you drink milk, we don't. But, she's got to ask you to do some shopping. Why? You should know how much is in the fridge just as much as she does. Like, these are just self-care issues. And so most men are so used to doing this that they think it's normal. That you've been brought up to feel that way by your own mothers that think it's normal, ironically. And certainly by your fathers as well. And so you've got a double injury. You've got dad in agreement with it and you've got mum in agreement with it. Right? So you've got both parents agreeing that this makes you a good guy. Right? And it makes you a terrible person from God's principles perspective, in the sense that your character has been damaged by the lack of equality as a principle in your upbringing. Right? Now, just that one injury means that I'm going to be sexually attracted to a woman who gives me her power. I'm going to be sexually attracted to a woman who gives me her affection, and I might not care for her as much as she does for me. I'm going to be sexually attracted to a woman who expresses her desires for me, and I don't really have to express much desire for her. I'm going to be sexually attracted to a woman who gives me a sense that I'm a great guy, but I don't have to, in fact, how I do that is by telling her she's not so great, she's not as good a woman as I am, and that makes her keep doing it. Right? And that obviously is going to be very damaging to your relationships with the opposite gender, isn't it? Very damaging. Now, this is, of course, this discussion so far has, many of you, some of you here, around 6 people here are gay, right? Without, some of them you don't even know it, but around that here are gay in the audience. And this does also apply to you because you've still got injuries associated with either gender that causes you to be in one of these dynamics, either the person with power or the person feeling they desire power and the other person feeling they want to give the person power. And these kind of dynamics need to be sorted out and need to be addressed, right? Okay, so here we are, just one spiritual principle, and already we're getting a little list. And if we kept going, we could go, and at home we have gone for days and days and days and days, listing all the things that one spiritual principle causes. And we don't want to do that with you today, but it's something that's worth doing for yourself, to work out just one spiritual problem causing all of these different things in you where there's a mismatch of desire, a mismatch of affection, a power imbalance, a justice issues, issues requiring a fix in terms of the way we perceive our relationship with the other person. Now, of course, given enough time, if I act out these dynamics, just those dynamics with Mary, can you see over time she's going to first probably like it, and then over time, because she might have, we wouldn't have probably been attracted to each other without her liking the opposite of what I'm liking to do, what I'm demanding from her. And then over time, she's going to feel exhausted, tired. She may even get a disease like cancer and other things all come from this inequality power dynamic. And she may get a disease and she may even eventually die as a result of her doing it. Or if she gets so tired and exhausted, she starts realising this is all wrong. I'm not putting up with it anymore, right? Now, that's great, but now what does she do? You're in the demand, and she's now no longer in accepting the demand. So if I'm in that relationship, what do I now do? Because what's going to happen now is she's going to complain about almost everything I do. It's now no longer don't have her approval anymore. She's also going to switch off her sexual and emotional desire to spend time with me, because I'm basically being a cat most of the time to her. And she's going to switch that off. Her affection will die, right? And she'll start going, you're just a power mad man, and I don't really want to be with you anymore. Right? What do most men do then?
Rage.
Girls, you tell me. Let's get out the line. Let's go get the girls and say, what have men done to you then when you start realising, Bex?
Rage.
Yep, so rage. So they get so angry with you, and how do they express that rage?
Overtly or covertly, but
Okay, so covertly, how have they done that?
gaslighting and manipulation.
Right, so undermining every thought you have, undermining every way you think. Yeah,
You're just stuck up.
yeah, you're this and you're that.
It's
and
your
you're-
problem.
Yeah, it's
Look
all
at you,
your
sorry,
problem. Look at me,
now.
I'm practicing divine truth, but you're not.
The worst is using divine truth.
Yeah, the worst is using God's truth as a method of manipulating the power dynamic back. And this is how a lot of people are misrepresenting the truths we teach by actually going, oh, that all applies to the woman, that nothing applies to me. Like, this kind of thing. So rage, covert or overt.
Physical threat or
Physical threat, standing
verbal.
over them, becoming a bully, getting to... And as many of you know, it eventually leads oftentimes to murdering the entire families of, mother and all children. Even stuff like that, it all comes from this response, yeah?
and withholding sexually or withdrawing.
Withdrawing sexually, so they withdraw. Emotionally, already withdrawn because they're not sensitive to anything, but now they also withdraw their sexual approval. Now, remember I said a lot of women are looking for the sexual approval because they don't have it. They don't have it from their mother. They've never been told by their mothers they've got a nice body, or that's like, oh, you're looking a bit fat now, and you're looking a bit, is that not true, girls? Yeah. And then the men go, oh, you're not looking after yourself, and you're not. And of course she doesn't want to look. You've ripped the guts out of her. How is she going to feel that she needs to look after herself anymore?
Yeah, you kind of disappear and blame yourself.
Yes, so withdraw and just go all quiet and sullen and blame yourself. But of course all of these things are not really feeling your emotions as a woman, are they? But you can understand the responses given all of the crap coming at you, right? Yeah? What else have you experienced, girls?
Coercion, manipulation.
Yeah, manipulation, undermining manipulation, like manipulating events, manipulating your life, making decisions without you being involved, telling you they're doing it for your good. There's all sorts of things like that going on. And implying that you can't do it well enough yourself so that you're going to need their help to do it, right? That's all maintaining this inequality. Yeah. Now, yes, let's continue, shall we? Up the back there.
Cheating as well.
Cheating, yes. In other words, you're not good enough for me, but somebody else is, so I'll go and find them and have sex with them.
She
instead.
likes me even if you stop liking me.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I could do a long list here, but physical abuse.
Physical abuse.
Actually telling lies about you, making out that you've done something wrong,
Which you're not
controlling
actually
you
doing.
financially,
Yes.
taking money off you,
Taking money away from you.
lying,
Yes.
making out that you
Yeah.
there's a lot.
There's a lot.
Controlling you, manipulating, making you worse, making you in a financial situation.
That's desperate.
and also being mean to you.
Yeah.
I've got a situation at the moment where instead of being kind at just fixing something, they've actually gone the other way and shaved more off the door to be meaner.
Yeah.
Things like that, because it gives them power and control, and they like to see you scared and fearful and in terror.
Yeah, very important thing. They like to see a woman's fear, because if a woman stays in fear, then she also possibly will stay in control. Under control. Yeah. So they like to see a woman who's afraid, right?
One of the biggest issues that as women as we have is the unwillingness to feel our terror, because this is the way we're manipulated most of the time.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to feel terror. Anyone who has a dark intention then towards you goes, well, that's all right, we just trigger the terror in whichever way, whether it's a terror you're a bad woman, or you're a selfish person, or you're just stupid and you can't make it in the world, or oh, you're going to be physically unsafe. All of those things are all lies that we're told to keep us being dependent upon.
And also being sexually engaged with a person who's abusive.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, can we stop now, because we could go on for days. and can you see, it's very interesting too. You girls can list it pretty easy, right? Because all of you at some point have probably experienced it, which is also very interesting. And we find this at home too when we raise these conversations. It's really interesting because the men will go all sheepish and all feeling like, oh, now AJ doesn't like men very much and he must like women more than he likes men. No, I'm just expressing what God's opinion is of your behaviour as men generally. Does that make sense? This is God's opinion of your behaviour generally. And if you listened to your women, you would know that it's bad. And the fact is, you don't know it's bad, mostly because you can't listen to a woman to know it's bad. You'd rather come along and listen to Jesus than you would listen to your partner. But that's pretty bad. Like, she's in your life every day. Like, why are you not listening to her?
We meet a lot of women who feel very upset about that exact thing. Oh, he came to your lecture and now he wants to look at this, but I've been saying this for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know?
It's one of the reasons why some women say, I don't want to listen to that guy, because you listen to him and as if he's like not been saying things that I've been saying to you for 10 or 15 years, and why are you listening to him and not me?
Some people actually bring their phone and say, Jesus, I'm having this problem with my husband. Could you talk about it? He'll listen to you.
But he won't listen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my advice to her is leave. Because if he can't listen to you, then what's the point of having a relationship with him? Like, if he can't even listen, like, there's a problem there, right? So, yeah, so these people who claim that I break up relationships, well, sometimes I do. When you be honest with people and they realise, oh, I'm in a bad relationship, what are they going to do? They're going to probably leave. Right? That's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not afraid of saying that sometimes my advice given to them based upon the principle is going to be leave him because he's bad, you know, until he sorts himself out. Even if he's your soulmate, leave him. Even if you think he's your soulmate, leave him, because if he treats you in this way, it's not equal. And while he treats you this way and doesn't see it, there are major spiritual principles being broken, and if you accept it, you are going to bear some penalties associated with accepting that kind of behaviour. And I don't mean accepting it like being angry about it. I mean just, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to be with the person. It doesn't matter whether you have children or not. Well, if you have children, it's going to be harder, of course, because you're probably reliant on some income from them and so forth. And what I've seen a lot of men do, and this is happening very often, by the way, is the woman starts complaining about the lack of equality. The man says, put up with it or shut up. And the woman goes, no, I'm not putting up with it, so I'm leaving. And then she's got 3 kids, and he doesn't want to provide for his children anymore either. And this is why we have governments now enforcing men to pay child support, because the men themselves don't have enough spiritual principles to say, I'm responsible for the children that I brought into this world. Right? They're too busy like thinking, we've had some men come to our seminars and they go, I asked them, do you pay child support? They say, I broke up with my wife 3 years ago or something. And because after I heard Divine Truth, I thought blah, blah, blah. And I say, do you pay child support? At least. Like, do you at least do that? No. Where's the love there? There's no love there. It's all about him and what he wants. He's not practicing God's principles. He's practicing what I would classify as the opposite of God's principles, right? So men, you have a lot of problems in this regard, and there are many of you men who even think you don't have a problem, have a lot of problems in this regard. We've met very many mild-mannered men who are sexually projecting at women constantly, demanding of women constantly. So often there's this power thing. And then there's another group of men, which some of you are also in this audience, who are needy for women, want a woman's constant attention, wants her constant approval, want her constant acceptance. And the women just feel that as a barrage of stuff coming at them that you want from them. And none of that is actual attraction. None of it's attraction. It's all addiction. Right? So one of the biggest problems that are on earth is the relationship between the genders. You know that. That's why there's like, no, let's go down pub with my mates. You know, that's why, let's go and have a shower for my child. You know, what do you call it? A
Baby shower.
baby shower. I don't know why it's called that, but I suppose it means shower the baby with gifts.
Yeah.
But let's do that. But are the men invited? No. Why would I invite any man who's got that attitude? why would I have him there? You know? No, that's a girl's thing. And then there's boys' things, isn't there? Like, let's go to soccer, to footy. Let's go to footy. Like, you look at a whole football stadium, how many women do you see in that stadium? It's like, well, why are those men there? You know, often competitive with other men, competitive with their fathers. They need to watch a nil-nil draw.
Jesus really doesn't like
A nil-nil draw is, what is it, half? 45 minutes, a half, isn't it?
Isn't it quarters?
Educate me to soccer.
Yeah, 45.
Half is 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 90 minutes, the whole thing. Yeah. And for 90 minutes, they work their guts out, and there's no result. Yeah, wouldn't it be better they go outside and worked on the garden or something? Of course it would. And so, you know, but why do they go? Because there's addictions involved, and those addictions meet a man's desires, meet a man's addictions, but not many women's addictions. Women are less competitive with men, right? They are often very competitive with women, of course, because of their relationships with their mothers. But, you know, going to sport doesn't solve that one, because most mothers say, no, you've got to have a baby to solve that one. Right? So there's all these addictions between the genders and inside each gender, and most of us on earth have no idea how many there are. Like there's a multitude of them. It's like goes on and on and on. And any psychologist around the world would surely understand, given all of the things they see on a day-to-day basis, that these addictions all exist. But a lot of times they're called, instead of being called addictions, they're called needs. In other words, it's very important that you approve of your husband and he approves of you. This is a need, a basic human need. No, it's not. It's a basic human addiction. When you love yourself properly, you will not need anyone else to approve of you. Right? You won't, because you approve of yourself, and you'll feel God's approval of you, so you don't need it from anybody else. So these so-called needs are not really, they're not designed in you, they are character flaws that need to be addressed. Now, if I am unable, in answer to Glenda's question, if I am unable to address these problems, just with this one problem of equality, and I haven't listed any others, any other spiritual principles like truth, self-responsibility, you know, order, governance, you know, who's responsible. There's a lot of other principles which we could also raise that occur in a relationship. But just even this one issue of equality, if I'm not addressing that, who am I going to be attracted to? going to be the person who meets those requirements. So in other words, a woman, if I'm power hungry in the relationship, the woman who has no power, I'll be attracted to. If I'm powerless in a relationship, the woman who has power over me, I'll be attracted to. Right? If I have a feeling of affection that I then interpret, see, for most men, affection is sex, right? Isn't that true? Right? And how is that true? How did that ever become true inside of you, that you think affection is sex? Obviously there's got to be a problem there, right? Emotional problem there. Now, affection might involve sex under certain circumstances, but why is affection sex for most men? And if they don't have sex, they feel like, she don't want me anymore. Right? And for most men, if they don't have sex for a few days, it's like complaining. A few months, it's like, we got major problems, I need to go and have an affair or something. Right? If it was a few years, which it may be if you need to work your way through issues with your soulmate at different times, if it's a few years, let's say it's 5 years where you're with a person and you haven't had sex, how are most men by that time? Well, most men are not there by that time. Right? And the only time they are is if there's other addictions being met, generally. And this is why, inside of men, you asked about porn, inside of men, there's a lot of sadness, which is then turned into demand, which then gets turned into sexual demand, which then gets turned into demand, which then gets turned into, I've got to constantly be sexually stimulated. So pornography. Right? And if you deal with the sadness, then all of that dissipates. Right? The sadness of feeling that your mum doesn't really like you very much. And the reality is, most mothers don't really like you very much because by now you've become like their own husbands, who they also don't like very much. Because he's done the same thing with her for years and years and years. Right? So these patterns we see everywhere.
I know, I was just going to reiterate what you said. A lot of pornography, like engagement with pornography, is a number of different demands trying to be met. So it's a sexual demand, really, that you're engaged in.
That turns into the need for sexual stimulation to avoid the sadness.
Yeah, so it can be to avoid the sadness, it can be to avoid feeling powerless in your own life and unproductive in your own life. Yeah. It can be to avoid the feeling that you're never approved of as a man. So all
that
of
you don't receive any affection from somebody,
yes.
And how sad you are about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you feel,
but not understanding that for most of you guys, you've actually created a circumstance where no woman would really, who's in her right mind, would really want to give you affection or have a desire for you. If she's in her right mind, she wouldn't want to do that because it's like the inequality of such a relationship is so big that it's going to cause her a huge amount of pain if she got involved with you.
And of course, there's the opposite side of this that we haven't talked about, is that the woman who is attracted to these injuries obviously has her own
set of injuries
that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Because many of these women are honest, who have repeated relationships with men who have these kind of injuries. So that indicates something in us that is not being dealt with.
Yeah. Now let's just look for a moment to understand it better. Let's just look at the dynamic, just in one of those things. So let's look at the issue of power and just look at how it actually works in terms of what happens in the relationship. So here you've got the man and he's in a state where he wants power over a woman. In other words, he wants control of her thoughts and her feelings. He wants control of her thoughts because he wants her to think well of him. Right? He wants control of her feelings because he wants her to desire him. Right? So he wants to have power over her thoughts and her feelings. Now, she is in a state, if she's in a state where she wants to give the man good feelings and her good thoughts, can you see she's in a service position? She's a servant. She's serving his power, right? Giving him the feeling of power. Now, if she has the injury that she wants to do that, which, by the way, many times her own mother and her own father have created within her in her childhood, and she wants to do that, she'll willingly do it. Right?
She'll feel. Yeah.
And he goes, but it's what she wants. It's what she wants. And I'm going, yeah, but you see, the problem with that from God's perspective is you've broken the spiritual principle, which are the most severe penalties are, remember we said this yesterday, the most severe penalties in your life are the spiritual principles getting broken. Right? So even if she wants that, if he loved, was in harmony with the spirit principle of equality, he would firstly deal with why he wants power. Whether she wants to serve him or not, he would do this. And then he would also try to stop her from giving that power as well. He would also try to do that because knowing that it's actually her staying in this servant role is bad for her.
This happened in our relationship.
Yeah.
It happened. I was well trained. What does a man want? What does he feel? What do you want to do? How do you want it to be? All of that stuff. And Jesus would go, what do you want? Why are you asking me all the time? Why are you deferring to me all of the time?
But it wasn't just a simple, what do you want? We'd often sit down for hours and talk about why it is that you wanted those things. And
yeah.
My desire is to help Mary see that being a servant to me is not her role in life. But even though she's been taught to have that role, it's not her role in life. Her role in life is to engage her nature and desires. If she engages her nature, and it happens to be the same as my own, which will draw us closer, we'll end up wanting to do the same things in the end, but she must do it for herself and not because I want her to, not because I think she should. She needs to think she should. And I can't change her thoughts and I can't change her feelings. She can change her thoughts and feelings. And I shouldn't ever manipulate Mary's thoughts or feelings. I should never try to push her into something that I want her to do. All I need to do is present the truth, God's truth, and say, here's all your options, what do you want to do? Right? And then it's her decision what she does. And if she disagrees with me that it's God's truth, have a discussion about that as well. Because we need to both sort out whether it is God's truth or not, if that's...
And also you're not someone who just throws around God's truth as a way to get me to listen, if that makes sense. Or
to make you feel bad about yourself.
Yes, you developed yourself in a way that you feel very confident of your relationship with God rather than, just listening to some Divine Truth videos and then saying, well, God's truth is you should do what I want, which is essentially what we see happening in a lot of relationships. Where there's this idea that, I've heard something that AJ said, and now I'm going to use that to try and really get my emotional and sexual addiction met without doing any personal work on what are my emotional and sexual addictions. It's the same as deciding, that person's my soulmate, without having done any work on those things. Jesus was celibate for 5 years, so 5 years outside of any kind of sexual relationship before.
And I'd already processed my emotions for 13.
Yes.
Before I met Mary.
Yeah. So
13 and 5 years completely celibate.
Quite a lot of personal responsibility for the emotional and sexual addictions that he had. And then when we met, there was still emotional addictions that you had with women that you thoroughly just got on with getting through the relationship. So,
Yeah. So
there's something else I'm going to say about that. Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
Her role is to not be your servant in any manner, right? Her role is to discover who she is and be that.
And ladies, when I started this relationship with Jesus, I hated that idea. I liked the sound of it. That's what I thought I was doing with my life, But actually, when he didn't need me to cook or clean or look after him financially or especially emotionally, which was my background in my family. I was young with daddy's emotions. When he didn't need that, it was very, very challenging for me. I felt angry. I felt like, what's my purpose? I had feelings in me I didn't even realise were there, because I could complain about doing all these things in the previous relationships, but when I got to one where it wasn't required of me, in fact was rejected of me, okay, there's some investment in me in feeling like I'm not going to be rejected if I do these things for the man, or I've got some sense of security in the relationship. He's not going, because he needs me for something, he won't reject me. And all of those things were injuries in me about love that were causing me to seek out relationships with men who didn't treat me well.
So I need to get to a stage where I don't need Mary at all, but I would desire her. I want to give her the gift of my love. Right? Love is the most strong binding attraction with any people. Love is the binding attraction, not addiction, not needs, not Mary's role is I can't cook for myself. Like, my father, who's now 82, just turning 83 this coming year. He only started cooking for the family when my mother got sick and she was 66. Before then, he didn't know how to cook anything. So that's the environment I was brought up in, right? And one of the things I saw in that was very young age, I saw this is wrong. And so when I was 6, I made a deal with my mother that I would cook 3 meals a week. Right? Which I did until I left home. Just because I could see it was unfair, right, in what my father was demanding. Right? Now, he's now better with her because he's cooking and taking a lot more responsibility for doing things like cleaning and cooking and so forth. But why did it take 40 something years of marriage? They were married when he was 21 and she was 16. And why did it take, 44 years and a terrible sickness, right, to get to the point where he realised he needed to do that?
They took it 50 years, mate.
Sorry?
She was 16 when they got married and 66 when she got sick. So
Yeah, sorry, 50 years, yeah, 50 years.
But then the change didn't happen because he changed spiritually, it happened because he needed to eat.
That's right.
That's true.
It's true. So it didn't happen because of him automatically now feeling like I'm treating my wife unequally. It happened because she couldn't physically do it anymore, and so somebody had to. So he stepped up and did it. And this is what many women feel, isn't it? They only do it when you force them into doing it, when they have to do it for themselves, that's it. And this is a problem, and this causes anger between the genders. Right? And then, of course, all that anger boils into their feelings of withdrawal, of withdrawing love, withdrawing sex, withdrawing other things, because there's no attraction when you've got to look after a man like a baby for 50 years. Do you know what I mean? So we start withdrawing all of those things, and you don't look up to, you don't respect him anymore, or really admire him anymore, right? You just sit with him, really. And the world says, oh, stay in a marriage, and it's all too hard to break up because by the time you're 60 or 70, you've built a life where you're financially, like bound and all those kind of things. And it's very hard after that to sort it all out. And I understand all that, but it does still need to be sorted out. But unfortunately for most people, that only happens in the spirit world. When there's less of the addictions, the financial addictions and security addictions, and they can start sorting out these particular problems. But it fundamentally comes from the lack of focus on the spiritual principles in a person's life. That's where it comes from. So every problem you face, sexual addictions, pornography, the feelings that you have towards women, the feelings of looking at every woman, and the feelings you have, in terms of answering this particular question, all of those feelings are all addictions. And so spiritual principles are the only things that are going to cure them. But those spiritual principles have to enter your heart. You have to want them in your heart for change to occur. Right? So without that, how do you recognise the other half of yourself? And this is why the average person never meets their soulmate on earth, or if they do, they never recognise them. Even when they think somebody's their soulmate on earth, they're still not with their soulmate for the most part. And they often do not get to be with their soulmate until the time they're in the fifth sphere of the spirit world. Now, as far as I can see in this room, there are only 2 couples that are actually with their soulmate. And Mary and I are one of them. Right? So that's very interesting in itself, isn't it? Like, and it is rare in an audience even to have one couple, more than one couple in the audience with their soulmate. And the reason why that is the case is because very few people work through these things. Right? Very few people work through this.
So their sexual addiction and their emotional addiction.
Yeah. Very few people work through that. And many people are using the principles of divine truth to go, you're my soulmate. I'm going to impose all of this inequality that I have in my heart on you now, because I've selected you to be my soulmate. Right? I'm going to basically push you into being my soulmate. And then 5 years later we talk to the same person and go, oh yeah, I worked out I did the wrong thing. So I went to another relationship. And I'd say to those people, you say you worked out you did the wrong thing, but you went to another relationship from that relationship. And they said, yeah. Well, you haven't worked out anything. You've just gone from one woman to another woman, or one man to another man, and you've just selected another one and said, oh, my soulmate now. And there's no difference between what you did this time and last time. You didn't focus and feel and work your way through any of these addictions, emotional addictions and sexual addictions. And by the way, physical addictions as well. This is what appearance is. Physical addictions. It's things that happen in your childhood and in your life where you go, that person's nice, and so you sort of feel the body type of that person's also nice. And there's all sorts of things occurring with physical attraction that most people on earth have no understanding with hardly at all. And as a result of that, none of these addictions get dealt with because the spiritual principle is ignored. You see, unless you adhere to a spiritual principle, these things, you won't feel inclined to deal with them. You won't even feel inclined. You'll just go, but I want my emotional addictions, and I want my sexual addictions, and I want my physical addictions. I won't, and I'm not inclined to change unless I start seeing that these things, if I don't do something about the spiritual principles, those things are going to cause me the greatest future damage of my life. And for many of you, where you're headed, many of you young men in particular, it's going to absolutely destroy the rest of your life on earth and quite a few hundred years of your spirit life as well, because you didn't want to know the spiritual principle. So this is why I'm saying to you, focus on the spiritual principle, right?
Yeah. And if we go to your original question, Daniel, you know, you sort of kind of put forward like, oh, there's all this stuff, and I think I'm attracted here, I might be attracted there, and then there's my soulmate, and I want my soulmate. It's sort of like, the spiritual principle is like, you know, when you're panning for gold or something, and you put all the rocks and all the stuff through a sieve, and you get finer and finer and finer, till you find like what the truth is, if you like, in this situation. The spiritual principle is like the finest sieve you can put things through. And a lot of people, because they hear divine truth and they're like, oh yeah, emotional addictions, I'll just look at some of that stuff, and then they're like, oh, but I'm confused, like that sort of feels like an injury, but I can't really figure it out, and I felt this and I don't know, and all of those kinds of things. It's because, as Jesus is saying, they haven't applied the spiritual principle. Applying the spiritual principle is going to help you to see where the actual error is in all of these other areas of your life. Yeah, just, you want to know?
So it's like cross-checking the dynamic in a relationship and my actions and desires against the principle, right?
Well,
it
you
in
want the
harmony?
principle to be in your heart.
Yeah.
When the principle is in your heart and you focus on getting those principles.
But a way to get it there, certainly, is to analyse all your past relationships. You go, what did I want in those relationships? What makes me feel attracted to a woman, and why do I feel attracted under those circumstances? What's going on in me? And start listing every area in your soul where your soul is against some fundamental spiritual principles.
And to get the principle engraved in my heart, it's from God, right? So I need to...
Well, there's two ways, isn't there? One way is to receive God's love, and therefore God's love will expose the principles much more easily.
That'd be great.
That's one. The second way is that you've got to work on the principles yourself, which is the natural love way. Either way will work.
But the quicker way is with God.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
quicker
makes
way
no
is
sense
with
to
God.
go the other way, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you receive God's love about these principles, don't neglect the fact that your opposition to the principles has to leave you emotionally. So it's not
Before
just...
you receive the love.
Yeah.
So it's the feeling of like the Teflon like initially.
Well, whatever you need to discover, why am I Teflon with
Yeah,
women?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
if a woman, what is it? What makes me not Teflon with some women, and quite interested, like, and quite ugh with other women? You know, if they're all your sisters, one of them's your soulmate, and all the rest are your sisters. Why are some of them like?
See, why would you not be affectionate with all of your sisters? When I say affectionate, I don't mean sexually affectionate. I mean just feel a feeling like, I want to know about you. I want to understand what's going on for you. I want to feel what your life's been like. I want to understand
What are you interested
what
in?
are you interested in and what your desires are. And why would you want to get to know them? What we notice is most men completely blank a woman unless they have a selfish personal interest in the woman.
She's going to be a sexual or an emotional addiction.
Now, can I point out, you're now saying, yeah, this sounds real good about having the relationship with God. And can you feel the selfishness in it? You're basically saying, yes, it's a lot harder to get these principles if I have to discover them myself. So what I'll do is I'll ask God for love and I'll get it.
So that's self-responsibility then.
That's right. No self-responsibility in that. You're not going to receive God's love under those circumstances, and that's not going to work either. So also, on top of that, if you maintain that idea, who's going to come to you other than God? It's going to be spirits who meet these same addictions in you, and you're connecting to the spirits as if they are God, and you're getting all these wonderful feelings from those spirits, which you believe are from God.
Yes, I asked God, is she my soulmate? Yes. God said yes. It's a yes.
Yeah.
Am I on the right track here?
So this spirit now is taking the place of God. So there's a spirit taking the place of God, and you believing he's God, and he's feeding you with all these addictions and all this all this information and all this what you say is truth. None of it is truth, but it's all his opinion of what you should do. And if he sees you looking at this woman, so this woman, man, he sees you looking at this woman and he goes, yeah, I'd like to have a bit of sex with her too. So, yeah, she's your soulmate.
Then I know, like, and then I think I can get it. If you can correct me at any point, right? You will. I know that the addictions are not from God, but I do them anyway.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't realise all of your addictions.
Okay.
And then you can then
And also
open
you
yourself.
don't understand the feelings that these feel like when you receive them.
Right.
You think they're love. You feel they're love. So when you're saying, God, please give me love, and the Spirit gives you those feelings, you go, is God loving me? God loves me. I've received God's love. Many of you have never received God's love at all.
Because my kind of point of reference is when if I cry, instantly that's God.
Not necessarily.
Right.
You can cry when you don't get your addictions back. You think of a child. What does a child do when he doesn't get his addiction back? He has a bit of a scream first, right? Carry on. Yep.
But you
And that's
Specifically, when I ask for love.
when you have a pleasant feeling and you cry and then you feel like that's God's love. Well, you can also cry when a spirit gives you a feeling of being seen and loved for the first time in your life if you've never felt that.
And you're going to interpret that as God, and that's going to be a big mistake. Right? God's love is based upon What is it based upon? Spiritual principles.
And,
Right.
you know, the more you receive God's love, the more refined you're going to become on the spiritual principles.
Yeah.
You know, so River asked you a question yesterday about, you know, who's going to be one with God first. I feel like I could be that guy. But when you receive God's love, you don't have competitive feelings. Like you feel the sin in those feelings. You're like, oh, God doesn't feel like that.
That's the question of a person who's never received God's love. Yeah. But also the question of a person who's very overweight by his spirits.
In this dynamic, James is drawing.
Getting their
between
addictions
the-
met through spirits.
Yeah.
So the spirit knows you have these addictions because he can see those colours coming out of you, and he goes, okay, this is great. I got Daniel having these feelings. This is good. I can sort of capitalise on that a bit. You know, I'm earthbound and I don't get the chance to have sex with any women anymore because most of the women in the spirit world just avoid me like the plague. So what I can do is I can connect with Daniel and just give him some feelings that he thinks are God. Right? So here's Daniel and here's the spirit. Give him some feelings that he thinks is God. Oh yeah, Daniel's going, oh yeah, give me more of that, give me more of that, give me more of that. And then in the process, you know, he's getting you to look at different women and go, yeah, I think she's my soulmate. So when he's getting you to look at the women, he's just going, that's the next woman I want you to have sex with.
And she's got some injuries that you're going to be able to exploit.
And she's got some injuries I can exploit through you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why a lot of people, and one thing I must say, many of you young men in particular, are in this dynamic where you think that's God and it's not. And also many of you are in this dynamic where you're getting told the things to do, and all of those things are actually out of harmony with principles. And many of you are in the dynamic where when you look at a woman and think she's for you, you're actually being told she's for you because she's got emotional injuries that will meet your emotional injuries. And on top of all of that, many of you are doing it in the name of God's truth, which is the very, very worst blasphemy of God's truth you can imagine. Right? So the sin is great when you do this. It's very, very bad for you, very bad for the woman, very bad for the spirit, very bad for your future, but also you're misrepresenting the truths we're teaching by doing it. Right? Which is also bad for God's truth on earth. So many of you go, I'd really like to help God's truth on earth, and then you do things like this.
And can I just point out that as we're talking about this, many of the spirits who are in this dynamic with you are causing you to freak out, get annoyed, sort of
shut down.
Go, oh, none of it makes sense anymore.
Doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, so is that the shaking up of feelings since yesterday?
Yeah, there's a lot of spirits who are very afraid of whatever we're going to say today. And very afraid of what we said yesterday, actually. You know, they're well entrenched in these relationships with you, many of you younger men in particular, well entrenched with these relationships. And also for many women here, your sexual dynamics between partners have been one of being consideratory to these kind of injuries. Right? So this is something to address because it just means that you end up being controlled by others.
My relationship with them is so like deep and close that I can feel their fear through me, even though I'm okay with sitting here shaking. Like it doesn't bother me much.
Well, they like that. This is the trouble. Is many of you are listening to divine truth and go, and in the process of listening to divine truth, you're going, oh, we have to accept what we've always sort of had a suspicion of, and that is there is a spirit world and there are spirits around us, and we have to accept all that. And there's spirits around you going, you kidding? They're now accepting things now. I can have more influence on them, and if you don't adhere to the spiritual principles and you instead just deal with your emotions and deal with some of what you think is sexually and physically, they can get, okay, they want you to do this. They want you to do that because it will bind you more to them for the most part, right? Because you haven't adhered to any spiritual principles while you're doing that. Most of the emotions you process will only be the emotions they let you process, so you can get closer to them. And most of the sexual addictions you process will be only the ones they let you process, so you can get closer to them. And so they're happy for you to recognise there's a spirit world, to recognise there's spirits with you, and to even believe that they are God.
feel them now. Like,
Yeah.
I think I can.
Yeah.
Now,
But can I just quickly go back to what Dan said? You said my relationship with them is so close that I can feel their feelings as if they're my own. Yeah.
you said feel their fear as if it's my own,
But it's really
but it's all their feelings.
all their feelings.
Not
And
just the
it's a
feelings.
good point because everybody on earth is pretty much that close to spirits. You know, there are spirits around every person who you don't even realise that that's not you. I know that sounds a bit freaky when I say it, but this is why we have to talk about it, because the more you're aware of it, the more you start to, like what you just did, say, oh, now I feel that's them and not me. Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, but the fact that they can pass all your feelings to their feelings to you, and you can feel them, that's how accepting you are of all of their feelings.
Are you going to talk about how we stop this?
Well, really, the clue is in the presentation, isn't it?
Principles.
If you adhere to spiritual principles, if you look at the spiritual principles behind every action you take, and you examine it really closely, you ask for God's help to know what the principle is and understand the principle, can you see any attempt to control you from outside of you is nullified by you adhering to the principle? You're in you're in a condition of moral fortitude. In other words, someone can't influence you to do something immoral because you're adhering to the spiritual principle. The problem with what's going on for many of you is that there's no adherence to the spiritual principle, but there is adherence to other principles of your teaching. And then in that process, you open yourself up further to the very influences that are causing already a lot of damage in your life. And they like that, so they'll let you do it. They'll even make you think like you are doing it like the right way.
Like, oh, I'm processing all these emotions and everything.
They make River feel like he's received God's love when he's received none.
Very often you're just feeling the Spirit's emotions, or the Spirit, as Jesus is saying, is letting you feel some things. But this connection with these spirits is very easy to break, actually. But it depends on you desiring spiritual principles and releasing emotionally your opposition to the spiritual principles.
Yeah. Yeah. Does everyone get that? Very important.
Like, it's so fragile, this connection, actually.
Because it's based on just feelings that are codependent.
It's based on sexual and emotional addictions, theirs and yours. And actually, they're incredibly temporary. They're not a part of you. They're not lasting things. They're only lasting because of the exercise of your personal will. And if you change your personal will, it's over.
Change will through desire.
Through desire,
So,
through the other...
Sincere desire for the principles.
Yes.
And just work on that, and that's enough. For now.
Well, you remember it's got to be an emotional process where
Yeah.
you feel the principle, not just think it. So for a person on the natural love path, what they do is they realise there's a spiritual principle. So let's look at what a person on the natural love path would do. They basically would go, I've got it in mind. They basically would go, let's say we look at the spiritual principle of truth as an example. So here I am looking at the spiritual principle of truth. What's involved in truth? Well, we go openness. Transparency. I just can't write very well.
No,
Is it
right.
A-N-C-Y or?
N-C-Y. Well, this is
Is that right? What is right? Who's the editor?
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. So transparency, honesty. That's honesty with yourself as well as with somebody else. Transparency with yourself as well as someone else. Openness with yourself as well as someone else, right? Even if we just look at those three, there's more qualities of truth, right? These are just three. Now, let's look at those three. If I am open with myself, I will know what my faults are. And I'll be honest with myself about them. Because honesty, truth demands that. I will also be transparent with other people what my injuries are. Not for the purpose of manipulating them, but for the purpose of helping them see me. I'll be open about that as well. But Mary has modelled this behaviour to you for years. She's open with you about her injuries. I've modelled it for years. I'm open with you about mine. right? It's an aspect of humility too, isn't it, to do these things? But it's also of truth. Now, can you see, if those things are going on, right, in me, then it's going to be very hard for a spirit who's not open, not transparent, and not honest to like me at all. Very hard.
Just that one
Just-
quality alone.
They'll go, oh, he's like a leaking sieve, you know, like, you know, like a faulty tap, you know. He keeps blurting out all these things that we're trying to use to manipulate other people, and he just says, oh, this is my fault. And I go, you know, as a spirit, you imagine you hear, yeah, go for that power, and then you're open with yourself and say, I want power, that's wrong. And you're also transparent with other people. Yeah, I can feel I want power, that's wrong. In this situation, I need to just leave. You know, and I'm honest about with myself and the other person. If given the opportunity, so if somebody says, I'm really attracted to you, you know, and you go, oh, I can see it's because you don't think very well of yourself, and I like that. You know, and honestly, I can't have a relationship with you. I'm honest with myself that I can't do it because I'm adhering to the principle. You imagine what the spirit's going. He's going, no, I want the relationship. No, I want the sex. I want, no. You know, the spirit's in a panic, and he's going to make you feel like, try to push you into the relationship and try to help justify. But if you're just in the state of truth, it's going to be very hard for you to listen.
Yeah, and can I add, because I know we're raising the issue of mistaking spirits for God. The level of spirit attack and influence that both Jesus and I, let's say spirit influence, like I have been subject to a lot of spirit influence, especially since I remembered who I am. Immense, but all my life, but really a lot. But because two of the spiritual principles, coincidentally the ones that Jesus has written on the board, about equality amongst humans and my love of truth.
Which are like very much something that's solid in Mary and myself.
Yes,
Yeah.
these principles are strong in me. Because of that, even the influence, like I've had spirits trying to manipulate me sexually, emotionally, physically, make me withdraw, shut up, like we were talking about yesterday, make me think I'm a very bad person, try to compete, all these things. But because those two qualities, just two qualities were inside of me, none of them could confuse me that they're God. None of them could, I didn't confuse them ever and think, oh, this must be God. Because any spirit who's in a dark condition doesn't have those qualities, and I was sensitive to that. Does that make sense? It's sort of, this is what I mean. If you have these spiritual principles, the confusion around the spirits, the identity or the nature of the spirits around you is cleared up very quickly. But also the difference between spirit and God becomes, even before you even connect to God, you understand, well, these spiritual principles are from God. Even if I have one of them, equality, if I'm connecting to a spirit, or if I'm feeling something from a spirit, or that I think if I'm feeling something from what I think is God, and it's making me feel better than other people, or competitive with other people, or even less than other people, it can't be God.
And then, did you get sensitized to that straight away as soon as it gets in you, or do you need to, like...
I think you have to long for these principles.
Right.
You know, it's
in a real,
you have to develop an desire for them.
Yeah.
It's not a kind of one and done thing. I'm just saying that, like, not like, I want equality, I love that idea, it's going to be in me now.
Mary's lived a life where she wanted to go and help people in different countries who were in a place of inequality. She's demonstrated in her life before she met me, way before she met me, that she was interested in making people in the world feel more equal with each other. And she's acted that out her entire life since she was in her teenage years, right? So it's not, it's not something that she, got overnight.
No, it's something that was developed in me that's helped me. And what I'm saying is, if you develop it in you, but it will require development if it's not already there, like anything. That's why we're here on earth, to develop and to grow our will towards love. When you develop it, a lot of the other confusions in your life about who is my soulmate, is this God I'm connecting to, all these things simplify. It's like the panning for the gold thing. You go, oh, that's the truth here.
But I'm going to stop Mary now because she said enough, to be honest, with you in particular.
Yeah.
You're just in a panic because you don't want to go through the work. You want there to be a magical solution to this problem that you face. And there isn't going to be a magical solution. And this is the other addiction to spirits, is they give you the illusion there is a magical solution. There is not a magical solution. You're going to have to develop these principles inside of yourself, and you're going to have to work your way through whether you want them. Remember, that's your will in exercise. God expects you to develop your will to want these things, not to just magically somehow they come about. When you are so focused on the magic of it all happening, wanting it all to happen magically, you are actually going to draw more spirit influence to yourself, and they're going to give you the illusion that it's all going to happen magically. But just if you follow their direction, it will all happen magically, and it will all be wonderful, and you'll also end up deep in the hells when you pass if you do that. That will be the net result. And that's the warning we wanted to provide to many of you, is that this is the way you're headed. And because you don't want to do this yourself, remember, there are certain qualities I said that you're going to have for yourself. Remember yesterday what I said what they were? Can you remember? I said you had to have faith. That's your quality. In, what was it? God's truth, so that's His truth. About being humble, which is what you are going to have to do. And there's nobody else is going to help you with those things. Nobody. God's designed a universe where nobody can help you with those qualities. They can inspire you, they can encourage you, but you are going to have to do it for yourself. You're going to have to learn what it means to have faith in God's truth, and you're also going to have to be learned that the very first bit of faith you need to develop is in being humble, not in being arrogant, which is what we see in many young men, but being humble, right, to your true condition, whatever the true condition is. Now, what will help you is studying spiritual principles, right? And in the process of studying them, you'll learn firstly what they are in terms of their definition. But what does it mean to love somebody? What is that? Is that they meet my addictions, or is that I just give the gift of my love to them without there being any expectation in return? What does it actually feel like to love somebody without wanting anything from them? What does that feel like? Because most of you will not meet your soulmates until you have that feeling for them, where you just want to love them, not because of what they're going to bring you in your life, but because of what you want to give them. Right? Now, that feeling, love, you need to firstly understand what it is. You need to understand how it's expressed. There's all facets to it: kindness, compassion, understanding, listening, and all of these other qualities are involved in love of somebody. So if I love you, I will listen to you. I will be compassionate with your emotions and understanding. I will want to know, but also I'm not going to put up a crap from you either. I'm not going to just go, browbeat me with your nature and personality. I'm not going to do that either. I'm going to go, no, I've had enough of you now if you're out of line. I'm going to do that too. Love does these things. That's what God is doing with you. So here's the principle: love. What is involved with love? There's this. Equality is one thing involved in love. Another thing involved in love is compassion and understanding and listening and being concerned for others, not just for yourself, not being selfish. So you could actually write on the board, couldn't you, if you wanted to, if you really wanted to work through what love is, you could actually do this, couldn't you? You could write on the top of your page, and this is something that I'd recommend you do with every principle. You write at the top of the page, okay, love. What does that look like? What is it, and what is it not? other words, this is the column where I'm going to put all the things love is. And this is the column where I'm going to put all the things love isn't, right, that I know up till now for myself. And then I'm going to try to find the feeling of what love is in those things that I've just defined. So how does it feel to be compassionate? How does it feel to be understanding? How does it feel to want to listen to somebody? How does it feel? And then on this side, all the things love isn't. Right? How do those things feel? How do they feel? Not thinking now. I'm trying to feel what those things feel. Right? Like, now, there's my love page. Next page, truth. Truth is on the top of the next page. And by the way, you might need more than a page, right? The truth is the top of the next page. How does truth feel? What is it? It's honest, open, all these different things, honest, open, transparent, and so forth. What isn't it? Doesn't lie, doesn't manipulate, doesn't try to hide things. Many of you believe that just hiding yourself is not a sin, but it is, because it's in complete disharmony with the principle of truth. So if I can do this list for just love and truth alone, if I could even just be capable of doing that, and then I study my own life and go, how does my own life measure up with this principle? You can even ask God, couldn't you? And exercise the conscience. Yeah. God, how does my life end up? How am I not being open? How am I not being transparent? One way all of you are not being transparent is openly declaring your income. Right? To anybody who asks. That's one way you're not being transparent. Right? Mary and I do that on the net. We've modelled that behaviour for nearly 15 years or whatever, 12 years. Hardly anybody in the world has followed our example. But we do it because it's transparent. We're being transparent. So how are we going to learn what truth is? This is what truth feels like, and this is what it's not like. This is so withholding things, not truth. Withholding information, not truth. We could list all that out. There's your truth page, and then again analyse your life and go, how am I going in this regard? Am I demonstrating these qualities in my day-to-day life? And then you've got something to pray for, haven't you? You've got, okay, I can see I don't get truth really, because I don't do it in my life. I don't get it. Right? If I actually get a thing emotionally, I will do what's in this list automatically. This will be automatic for me to do these things. If I don't get it emotionally, it's going to be a struggle to do what's in the is. Whatever truth is, it's going to be a struggle to do in my life. If I'm not emotionally in harmony with truth, the principle of truth.
You could really start another list, couldn't you? Which is like, this is what love is, this is how I feel about doing that, or how I feel about living that.
Yeah, if you wanted to dig a bit deeper.
Yes, because a lot of times we have quite emotional responses to when it comes to humility and truthfulness, where it shows us very quickly where we're actually rejecting the principle in our life.
So remember, there are like the 4 biggest principles that we're going to have the biggest effect in your life are some fundamental principles, which are love, truth, faith, humility. So you could have 4 first pages. There's your first 4 pages of principles. Love, truth, faith, humility. What is faith? And we're talking about faith in God, faith in God's laws. What is it like? And then what isn't it? Does it constantly doubt, constantly going, I don't know whether that's true, I don't know whether I should do that.
Seeking other people's
opinions is another one, rather than God's. Yep. And you can do this for yourself, but it requires some effort.
And that's the final point I wanted to make about this spirit influence thing for a lot of the young guys. Like, I'll say, unfortunately, due to the way you've grown up in society and in your families, many times you haven't actually had to put in a dedicated effort to get a result.
To do anything.
To do anything. And what is required to develop your will in harmony with God's love is effort, and that goes for everyone. And that's a good thing. God wants you to understand how productive your will can be.
It's not only that, it's proof of your will. The effort you put into something is evidence that you're using your will.
Yes.
Right? If you just go, oh, I really like this thing, I think I'll go ahead and do that, and you do it, and it's really easy to do. What evidence is there that you've got a very strong will? There's none at all. It's when you get opposition from everybody, family, friends, and you know you've got your own stuff to work through, and you still go ahead and do it. Now that's proof you have a will, proof that you actually are developing a strong will. And we would like all of you to be very strong-willed people, not weak-willed. Weak-willed people are spirit overcloaked, often influenced by all sorts of things, influenced by doubt, influenced by all sorts of negative things. A little bit of fear, a weak-willed person just caves over. A little bit of things they're afraid of in life, they'll cave over. You know, weak-willed people are not morally, they don't have any moral character or moral strength. Right? So we want you to be strong-willed, but strong-willed in the
Spiritual principles.
in the right direction. You know?
Yeah, and when you have a feeling that you should get results easily and you shouldn't have to exercise your will, shouldn't have to develop your will, spirits love that. They come along and go, yeah, okay, I'll give you some feelings. And
I'll make it easy.
Because you haven't developed your will in this very strong moral way, you can't really discern what's going on, and you get confused.
Yeah, and the reason why a lot of young men in particular are quite overcloaked by spirits is because they want life to be easy.
And they want to feel powerful, they want to feel accomplished, they want to feel like they're worthy without actually having to deal with the opposite feelings inside of themselves.
Yeah. Okay, what's the time?
Yeah, it's 1:15.
1:15. And should we have some dinner?
Yeah.
Lunch? Lunch it is for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Come back at 1:45. Sound all right with you?
Oh la la.